the world held its breath when Russia activated the Oreshnik, a hypersonic missile that cannot be countered. The West, daring to strike Russian rear positions, received a response that travels at 3 kilometers per second, leaving no chance of escape. This is not just a missile, it is a warning to the entire world that Russia no longer plays by anyone else's rules. Get ready to find out how Oreshnik has blown apart all Western plans and forced the most influential leaders to reconsider their actions. The conflict in Ukraine has become global after Western long-range missiles hit Russia. Vladimir Putin made this statement on November 21 while addressing the Russian people. Yes, Moscow wants to resolve everything peacefully, but if they push, they're ready to respond decisively and symmetrically. On November 19 and 21, Western missiles hit military targets in the Kursk and Bryansk regions. It seems they decided to rattle our nerves. But it wasn't that simple. Russia responded by hitting an industrial facility in Dnipropetrovsk with the ballistic missile Oreshnik. Yes, it's non-nuclear but hypersonic, just to make sure there's no doubt. Experts are ecstatic. They say it's the first combat use of such medium-range missiles in Russia's history. Surprise, Oreshnik is a new product that no one had heard about before. As for those Western missiles, whatever they may be firing, they don't affect the course of the special military operation SMO. According to the president, Russian forces are advancing along the entire front line and are feeling quite confident. On November 21, Vladimir Putin announced that Western missiles had struck Russian territory. He spoke passionately about how, on November 19, 6 TATAMS missiles from the United States and on November 21, British Storm Shadow and HIMARS systems hit targets in the Kursk and Bryansk regions. But they didn't really achieve their goals. In the Bryansk region, a storage facility caught fire, and that only due to debris. It was quickly extinguished, with no casualties or significant destruction, boasted the president. In the Kursk region, the attack hit a command post of the North Group. But this time there were casualties and wounded. It is evident that these attacks were not carried out without specialists from the countries that produced the missiles. Well, this only confirms that without direct involvement from their Western friends, these missiles couldn't even get off the ground, said the head of state. Here we are, as we have stated repeatedly, the regional conflict in Ukraine, provoked by the West, has now gained a global scale, declared Vladimir Putin. Of course, everything is going according to plan, right? The president emphasized that no long-range toys of the enemy could influence the course of combat operations in the special military operation area. Russian forces are confidently advancing along the entire front line, and no one can stop them. In response to these Western provocations, Russian forces did not hold back and struck a Ukrainian defense industrial complex. It was a combined strike, just to make sure, using one of the latest medium-range missile systems. We conducted a trial under combat conditions. It was a ballistic missile in hypersonic configuration. Our missile engineers even named it Oreshnik. The tests were successful, the target was hit. And the target, I must say, was significant, an old Soviet industrial complex in Dnipropetrovsk, which is still producing missile technology and other weaponry, concluded the president. Well, meet the Oreshnik missiles, which have no countermeasures against them because they fly at a speed of 253 kilometers per second. All the enemy's air defense systems are just as useless as they've always been, Putin noted. And if we need to select targets for Oreshnik in Ukraine, of course, we will warn the local population, and also ask friendly country citizens present there to move away. And all this, of course, will be done out of humanitarian considerations, openly, publicly, without fear that the enemy could do anything with this information, said Putin. How did the Americans react to that? Russia sent a notification half an hour before the launch of Oreshnik through their channels to observe protocols and ensure that no one could later complain. Dmitry Peskov explained this. He also clarified that the Americans were not fully informed, as Oreshnik is not an intercontinental missile, meaning there was no need to make a big deal out of it. In the White House, they decided not to lag behind and also informed Ukraine and their allies in advance. Meanwhile, the ambassador to Ukraine, Brigitte Brink, seemed unfazed. She immediately called for more support for Kyiv on social media. Oreshnik, such a thing that no air defense system can counter, said military expert Dmitry Korna. It seems they made it based on the Iskander but with a new generation solid fuel engine just to make it cooler. According to him, it's the first time in Russia's history that medium-range ballistic missiles are being used in combat. Russia, again, is ahead of everyone in developing hypersonic technology, Kornev added. In the spring of 2024, at the 78th anniversary of the Kapustin Yar testing ground, a new Iskander-class missile with an upgraded engine was first shown. Maybe that was the Oreshnik. The system can easily bypass any existing modern air defense systems, military expert Vladislav Shurigin explained. Moreover, Oreshnik can even destroy bunkers at great depth without nuclear warheads. That's what you call a level up. Putin emphasized that the launch of Oreshnik is a response to all NATO's antics. It was not Russia, but the United States that destroyed the international security system, clinging to their hegemony and pushing the world toward a global conflict. We always preferred and are ready to resolve all contentious issues peacefully, but if necessary we will respond, he said. The United States, of course, is acting recklessly, crossing all red lines, and Russia will not stand idly by, shared military expert Viktor Lidokhin. One of our responses was the creation of the Oreshnik. It was tested in action, hitting the Yuzhmash plant, where they used to produce strategic missiles like Saturn. These had 10 warheads, each of 750 kilotons. It's not a joke, it's a message to make the West reconsider its direct involvement in the Ukrainian conflict. Next time, the strike could be on them, concluded the expert. He added that if the missile was launched from the Kapustin Yar testing ground, then Oreshnik is a solid fuel two-stage ballistic missile capable of carrying a nuclear warhead. Now it carried ordinary fragmentation or high explosive warheads. Oreshnik is a hypersonic medium-range missile, which means it is impossible to intercept. Russia is at the forefront of hypersonic technology. We also have Kinzhal, Avangard, and Zircon, finished Litovkin. Ilya Kranik, a researcher at the Center for Strategic Planning Studies at IMOMO, said that until now, the development of Oreshnik was of course a secret. It seems to me that this is a new intermediate-range missile somewhere between 500 and 50 km, but not intercontinental, he said. It also has a multiple independently chargeable reentry vehicle, quite a smart missile, what can I say? According to him, it looks like a trimmed-down version of the Yars missile system. And here's Moscow's response to all those Western long-range provocations. Putin declared that Russia is developing intermediate and shorter-range missiles in response to plans to place such missiles in Europe and the Asia-Pacific region. Americans unilaterally destroyed the Intermediate-Range Nuclear Forces Treaty in 2019, and now not only are they producing these missiles, but they are also preparing to deploy them around the world. We, by the way, voluntarily took on the commitment not to deploy these missiles until the Americans start deploying their toys, Putin reminded, hinting that patience might run out at any moment. Now Russia will decide when and where to deploy these missiles, depending on how aggressively the enemy acts. We will use our weapons against military targets of those countries that use their weapons against us. And if anyone still doubts that they shouldn't, the response will always be there. Putin stated, adding that ruling elites should seriously consider this. The escalation to a dangerous level is the fault of the Biden administration, claims Jeremy Kuzmarov, editor of Covertaction. He said that Biden handed Ukraine long-range missiles to strike Russia without Congress's approval, which is illegal. Some lawmakers even wanted to impeach this bold president. But instead of thinking about legality, the administration continues to supply Ukraine with billions of dollars in arms. And how could we get by without a historical excursion? Kuzmarov is convinced that all this began with the 2014 coup organized by the Obama administration, which overthrew Ukraine's legitimate leader Viktor Yanukovych. After that, the U.S. turned Ukraine into a playground for the CIA. Donald Trump might de-escalate the situation, says Kuzmarov, but it's still unclear whether he will agree to terms favorable to Russia. Either way, the situation remains extremely uncertain. No one doubts now that the conflict has moved to an international level. Alexei Shurovlev, the first deputy chairman of the State Duma Committee on Defense, straightforwardly put it: Zelensky's plan can be described in one word: give. And as always, the appeal is aimed at the West. In the victory plan for Ukraine, there is nothing that actually concerns Ukraine, he added. A plan where Ukraine's only role is to go and die is indeed strange. Zelensky dreams of dragging NATO into a direct fight with Russia, but so far it's just a dream. Reactions to Putin's words were immediate. The UN, as usual, made boring calls for both sides to de-escalate. But in Trump's camp, things were more epic. They announced that the new president would try to restore peace, but in such a way that the entire world understands just how powerful their army is. So the discussion about whether Ukrainian forces can use Western long-range weapons against Russian rear positions ignited in September like a fire on dry grass when things went wrong for the Ukrainian army on the battlefield. In early autumn, Western media were buzzing with reports that the United States and Britain would supposedly approve strikes on Russian rear positions with ATACMS and Storm Shadow missiles. Especially fueling the fire were the talks between British Foreign Secretary David Lammy and Secretary of State Antony Blinken on September 11 in Kyiv. Everyone expected that the outcome of these talks would be permission to hit Russia, but alas, no bold statements were made. In the end, neither Joe Biden nor British Prime Minister Keir Starmer dared to throw caution to the wind. However, according to The Times, Starmer did begin to shed caution a little after Biden lifted his objections to the strikes. And France, of course, couldn't resist, deciding enough was enough, and gave the green light to the use of Scalp missiles against Russia. Minister of the Armed Forces Bastien Lecornu even promised Kyiv an additional 10 missiles. But Germany decided to stand out. On November 18, Chancellor Olaf Scholz reiterated that no cruise missiles like Taurus would be given to Ukraine, apparently no need to mess with matters that could reach Moscow. Moreover, the Germans steadfastly refused to allow their weapons to be used against Russian positions. By deciding to use Oreshnik, Vladimir Putin shows that the Russian army is ready to defend itself by any means necessary. And rightly so, since the West is acting like this, Russia is simply obliged to respond. This was stated by Andrei Krasov, the first deputy head of the State Duma's Defense Committee. The changes in Russia's nuclear doctrine are, according to him, an extreme warning to the West, which seems to have lost all sense of limits. And today, as Krasov noted, the army has the most modern toys, which not only match but, in some cases, even surpass Western weapons. And now, after all these loud statements and strikes, the moment of truth has arrived. Western leaders have probably realized that this game is far from child's play, and Russia is ready to use all available means to protect its territory and interests. Oreshnik is not just a missile, it is a symbol of determination that cannot be ignored. Putin has shown that all these sanctions, red lines, and attempts at pressure will not make Russia back down. On the contrary, Moscow responds to provocations with such force that now everyone is closely watching its every move. One thing is clear in this game: Russia is not just a piece on the chessboard, but the one who decides what the next move will be. And if anyone still doesn't get it, they'd better brace themselves for a new reality where there are no more compromises.